Kind of crazy. Doing pretty good.
Last year it would have already been over.
Yeah. Extend the event by the month. Summit should just be running the entire time until the next summit. Cool, and we are live on stream. And we have... Cool. Sorry about the delay, everyone. I'm gonna quickly check. I think stream is live, and then we should be ready to go. Cool. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Sorry about the delay. We're gonna go ahead and get this presentation started. This is Misode with automated testing with PackTest, and I think we should be able to get it going. Oops.
Yep,
Go ahead.
I'm good to go. So hello, I'm Misode, and this is my panel called Automated Testing with PackTest. So PackTest is a mod that I made almost 3 years ago for the Game Mode 4 project. And to give you some context, Game Mode 4 is a project that has around 80 individual modules now. And you can probably imagine how much time that we spent first updating all the data packs to account for breaking changes and using new tech, and then also verifying in-game that everything still worked. So this is kind of the problem that we wanted to solve. PackTest is inspired by Mojang's own game test framework, and this is actually built into the game. So some of you might have watched this video by former Mojang developer Henrik, talking about how they use this game test framework for testing vanilla features. So before I made PackTest, I experimented with the idea of writing these Java tests for the Game Mode 4 Datapack project. That was in 2022. But I abandoned that idea because writing Java tests would not be very ergonomic for a Datapack developer. So then, a bit more than a year later, Plagiatus posted a similar idea in the Micro Commands Discord. And this is when I started developing PackTest. It sounded silly at first, but our conclusion was that MC function was the perfect language to write our tests in, because this is a language that we're very experienced in, and it would be able to interact with all the other datapack logic that we want to test. And it turns out that this was perfect timing, because a year later in 2024, Mojang released 1.20.5, which changed the item format to data components. And since I had written a fair amount of tests for Game Mode 4, this helped a lot during the updating process. And it proved that like a testing framework like this, it was actually quite necessary for Game Mode 4 to continue to update it to new versions. Okay, so enough history. Let me show you an actual demo now. We're going to write some tests for a very simple data pack. And this is basically the entire data pack right here. When you're holding a grass block of any, and you're standing on any kind of dirt, it will be replaced with a grass block. So you can see here, I'm just walking on this coarse dirt, making grass blocks. And now let's imagine that we're writing this in 1.21.11, because we're going to try to update this data pack to the latest version in a later step. So these tests need a structure, and we're going to be creating two tests, one with moss blocks and one with coarse dirt, because we want to test that all kind of dirt blocks work. So then let's get to writing the actual test files. on the left-hand side here, you can see the file structure. You can see at the top the actual MC function files of our test data pack. Then below we have the structure MPT files that I showed. And then below in the test folder, we have these two MC function files. The test folder is not in vanilla. It's something that the PackTest mod adds. And we can just write our MC function tests in here, and the mod will pick these up, and we will be able to run these in-game. So to run them in-game, we can use the test command. I think since 1.21.5, this command is actually available in-game by default without the mod, but it doesn't contain any tests by default. So PackTest now has registered these two tests. And if I skip like a couple ticks, because this is a freeze frame, you can see that the tests start running and it spawns these fake players in. Then a couple ticks later, when the data pack has run, you can see that both tests finish. It prints some messages in chat, and we see the green beacons. So this is all working quite well. And we can use some more test subcommands. Because this is a vanilla command, you can now just find the documentation on the Minecraft wiki. But this is working fine, but now let's update it to 26.2. And you can see one of the tests isn't working right now. And this is actually quite surprising, because when we're loading our data pack in 26.2, we don't see anything in the log. So we would actually have to test this in-game to verify that something is wrong with this pack. But because we wrote these automated tests, we can now see automatically that something broke. And if we then go to the changelog of 26.1, we can see that they split apart the dirt tag and they changed the contents of it. So this is something that is not visible in the logs, but still some behavior changes. This happens all the time. And this was actually a real breaking change in the Game with Horror project that we caught using these automated tests. Okay, so I'm going to go over this test function again and go over all the lines. At the beginning, we see here some comments, and these are called directives in PackTest. You have template and dummy, and there are a few different directives. So for example, you have environment. You can use this to change the test environment. This is also a vanilla feature, a test environment. You can, for example, specify that the test should be run only during the night, or maybe only in hard difficulty. And then the framework will make sure to run these tests in a different batch later, after changing the time of the world. Template, we've already seen this. You can use this to specify the structure MPT file that should be loaded for the test. By default, it just uses an empty structure. Then timeout is a value in ticks that tells you how long that the framework will wait for the test. It defaults to 5 seconds. Optional can be specified if you know that the test will fail, but for example, you can't fix it right now, and then it will make the beacon beam orange instead of red. And this is quite important if you run a bunch of tests in CI. Then sky access. This can be specified when your test needs sky access, because by default, all the tests, they run encased with barrier blocks, so they don't influence each other, but sometimes you need the sky access. And then the last one is maybe a more complicated one, dummy. This spawns a fake player, and it sets the at s in the function to that fake player, because a lot of a lot of tests they need like player interactivity in your data pack. So PackTest has a built-in fake player system. It's pretty similar to the carpet mod fake players. So they will look like regular players in your data pack, and they can be controlled with commands to make them do certain things. Okay, so now we understand the first two lines. On line 4 here, that's just a normal command. We can write any command in these tests, and it replaces the main hand of this fake player with crossblock. And then the line 6 here, this is the await command, and this is a command that PackTest adds. And basically what it does is it waits until the block at this position is a crossblock. What await will do is run this command every tick until this condition is valid, until it times out. So it will try for 5 seconds, and if it still hasn't found the crossblock, then it will fail the test. So these are all the custom commands that are added by PackTest. There are some simple ones like fail and succeed. And then we have assert and await. And these are for checking conditions. They are pretty similar to execute if. And assert just means that it checks it right then. And await, it will try multiple seconds. All these conditions, they are the same or like very similar to execute if, so you don't need to relearn the syntax. Okay, so now let's take a look at a more complicated test. This uses a more complicated test structure setup that you can see here on the left, with like a piston and an anvil. It summons some items, waits 1 second, places the redstone block, and then it awaits until the items are modified. Okay. So then so far I've only shown how to run the tests in game, but that could also get quite tedious. So what you can also do is run them from a CI environment, for example, GitHub Actions. And this is an example workflow. You probably can't quite read it, but the documentation is also on GitHub and on Modrin. What this does is it sets up Java, it downloads the mod files, and then it runs this Java command. And it will automatically run all the tests. And what this looks like then in the logs, you will see some errors. And for example, it said here it ran 106 tests. For Game Mode 4, this means that if someone makes a change to one of our modules and pushes it to a PR, we can immediately check whether all the tests are still working. So this is already the end of my panel. Thank you for listening. You can find the mod on GitHub and on Modrin, and I'm happy to answer any questions now, if there are any.
Thank you, Misode. Really great presentation. This was one I was really looking forward to, because I need to do this for vanilla tweaks. I sent you a doc that has some questions. I can send it to you again, and I can read them out for you.
Mhm.
One question here. This is actually for me. why use comment-based directive system instead of like a command-based one? Was there something specific about like commands, or was it inspired from something?
Okay, they're basically directives because some of these properties the framework needs to know in advance before even running the test. Yeah, for example, environment, that's it places a test in certain batches. So all the nighttime tests will be run at after the default tests. And so it wouldn't really be possible to put them as commands, because as soon as you run the commands, you would then realize, and I shouldn't really be running now, I should be running later. So it needs to pre-scan the directives first. That's why.
It's almost like a preprocessor step, is what you're saying.
Yes, the PackTest mod reads these directives first. They can only be on the first comment block.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How would I target the first dummy of multiple?
Right. So a PackTest really has, like, the system for dummies allows you to spawn one dummy and sets at S to the dummy. But you can also target the dummies by name. So you can use the dummy spawn command to create a new dummy or multiple, and then just target them by name or by distance. For example, all dummies within the test, you could run commands on them. At S is just a convenience method, so you can use at S in your tests and it works automatically. Yep, they're just, I see in the chat here, they're just players to the data pack. There are some limitations, like they might not move exactly like players because they don't have an actual client connected to them, and they don't load their skins. I see a message here in chat. How do you set their names? Let me go back a few. The very first command here, dummy name spawn, is how you summon a new dummy. I also saw a question here in the document, shouldn't sky access be in environment? It's a valid question. It may sound like that at first, but environment is actually a reference to the tests_environment folder in vanilla. So you would create a JSON file in your data pack, which is a test environment, and that's a vanilla data structure that the PackTest mod is not modifying. And sky access is a separate Boolean that the framework expects. Okay, the next question I see here is, how long does the Game Mode 4 test suite take? Do you have a full test suite, or does it only run tests per module? Yeah. So right now it takes about 3 to 4 minutes for all our tests to run. But this also includes like building the data packs with Beat. You can see the actual running this the server with the tests only takes about 30 seconds.
Okay.
So we don't really have anything set up to only run tests per module, because it wouldn't really make that much of a difference.
That was a lot faster than I thought.
Yeah. Although we'll always try to make it faster, right? Waiting for a couple minutes can get annoying if you're doing it quite a lot. Next question here is, in which types of projects or scenarios would you recommend someone use PackTest? It's a bit more of a difficult question to answer. For our case in Game Mode 4, it really helped because we have a lot of features, and those features don't necessarily change very often. We keep the functions of our data pack the same every version, but every version we need to validate that they still work. So maybe if you're developing a data pack and you're constantly adding new features and changing stuff, it might not be worth it to to add to write these tests. But you can also always start simple and like write a couple tests, maybe not for every complicated case. Are there features that you would like to add to PackTest in the future? And if so, what features? Of course, there's always features that I would want to add. Like more ways to assert data. Like you could maybe add a way to test like numbers in storage directly. Maybe checking if sounds are played. Another thing that PackTest is not really good at yet is randomness. Like if your pack only would place the grass block in 10% of the time, it might just not happen during those 5 seconds. And then it could cause the test to fail even though everything is working as expected. So that's still like an open question that maybe could be solved eventually. Is it possible and necessary to make a coverage test? Coverage, yeah, that's quite common in unit testing in software. It's not built into PackTest. I assume it would be possible, but I haven't really explored how that would be added. And there's probably also quite a lot of places in a data pack that don't get run. You would need to write a lot of tests to cover everything. And then next question, is it limited to one test per file? Yes, it is. So yeah, in other testing frameworks in software, you could group things. Here, I guess, because this was inspired by MC functions, you can only have one test per file. But I guess nothing is stopping someone from using Beat to write a layer on top of this.
Yeah, if you register as a mecha resource, then you could write them a ton in one file automatically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is there a template for the GitHub automated tests? Yes, there is. This exact snippet is available in the README of the mod. Then can I set up multiple tests for multiple versions of Minecraft? Yes. We actually did this for Game of 4 when we were using overlays. So we would test all the versions that the overlays were supposed to support. And we would basically just use this the matrix test job in GitHub Actions. Or I guess you could also just like duplicate this and use the different parameters. A question here, if another function is referenced from a test, will it wait for that function to complete or only check if triggering the function succeeded? I think I know what you mean. Like if you have a run fail in one of the sub functions in the test, I don't think it would stop the test right now, but I guess if someone wants that to be true and thinks it makes more sense, I could look into that. But it's not something I have used myself, that behavior. Because for Game of 4, like our tests are pretty self-contained. Like you don't want to be calling so many internal functions in your tests. You would rather modify the world or have the player do something and then make sure that the data pack reacts correctly to that rather than calling functions. Next question, can you overlay test files? Yeah, you can, because overlays are just it's like a step that Minecraft does before any mob that tries to read files. so it simplifies the data pack. Where do the tests happen? Does PackTest create worlds or dimensions to play the tests? Is it assigned a world? This is something that the mod doesn't really change. It uses the vanilla game test framework. So by default, it just places the tests where you're at. And it kind of expects that you're in a flat world. So this might not be ideal if you're trying to test a custom map. But then you would probably want to have like an area where you run the tests or test it on a copy of the world. Okay, see another question here. How was the process of adding back tests for Game of War? There's a ton of content. Was it done piece by piece, or was it one giant PR? Are you the main maintainer of the tests, or do other contributors help maintain as features or modules get added? There was an initial PR adding some tests. I'm not sure how many. I can't really remember that. But that was basically just to get the framework installed in our workflow. And then, of course, more and more tests were added. I do assume that I have written the most tests, but I think there's been a fair few tests that have been written by other contributors. Okay, a bit more philosophical question. What do you see for the future of backtests? Are there any features you want to see from the game to improve it, or are there a new feature set that you think would take backtests to the next level? Or is it feature complete? I mean, no, it's not feature complete. There was a similar question, I think. Like we can always add stuff, but time is limited. So I think for the last year or two, I've not been really adding features to it. It's in a pretty stable place. If you want to see from the game to improve, modding has been improving the internal game test framework, presumably for themselves. For example, with the addition of the test instance blocks and redstone-based tests, you can already do in vanilla. But yeah, you can never guess what Modding is going to do next. I see a question here in chat. Other than Game with 4, do you know of other projects that use PackTest that would be good to look at for examples? I'm not sure if there are like. I should look into this more. I didn't do any research on this. But I know, like when I was actively developing PackTest a couple of years ago, there were quite a few projects interested. And Orex is saying that vanilla tweaks will soon do it, so I guess we'll see. I'll try to remember after the panel to try to look at this and maybe add some references on the README of the project. A question: do the vanilla tests have a barrier box too? Yes, this is a vanilla behavior, and it's also because they changed this in vanilla. It's why I added the sky access directive. A question from Runkos: when will the dummy at S use block? Okay, this is in reference to an issue that's on the bug tracker of PackTest. There are some things that dummies do differently than players, and it can like have some effects on your data pack. So I guess that's something to be aware of if you're working with PackTest. Maybe an interesting story is in the beginning, before they added these test instance blocks, the game test framework used beacons. So every dummy that spawned there got the immediate like advancement when you're near a beacon, and that could break certain tests. So yeah. Okay, I think I've gone through all the questions. Of course, if you have any more questions, you can always contact me. There is a thread in the Minecraft Commands Discord about backtests, and also on the GitHub issue tracker, you can also always put IDs or bugs.
Another last question. Have you thought about putting together your own Discord other than just using MCC threads?
Yeah, sure. I've thought about it. But basically, I don't want to deal with moderation that comes with it. So I've just been using a bunch of other Discords, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool. Well, thanks for presenting, Misode. This will be the end of our panel today. Misode has a booth in the Wilted Woodlands, actually connected to the Beat booth, which Misode is also a contributor for. So you can go check out that booth to learn more about Misode's generators, PackTest, and everything else that Misode does, because Misode carries the entire community here. Thanks everyone for joining today. We have quite a packed schedule today. I think next up we have a Masquerade playtest coming up soon, so look out for that. Also, for everyone here, we've announced the Firesides number 2. A couple topics have already been proposed that didn't make it in the first one, so check that out on your calendar and do join us for some casual chat later today. It's on the calendar and on the Smith calendar as well. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you on Smith Summit. Take care.